Hello and welcome to Dialogue. Dubbed as an encyclopedia of social life, China's first ever civil code came into force on January the 1st. It legislates on rights ranging from property and contracts to personality, marriage and family law. So, what does the new code mean for China's civil legislation, and how would it better protect civil rights and support development? And what are the challenges implementing the code? To talk about these issues, I'm joined by Anar Tungan, independent current affairs commentator, He Jing, attorney at Gen Law Firm, Lawrence Ma, barrister and chairman of the Hong Kong Legal Exchange Foundation, and George Conk, senior fellow at Fordham Law School's Stein Center for Law and Ethics. And later on, we'll be joined by Professor Li Jinzhao from Beijing Foreign Studies University. That is our topic. I'm Zhou Yue. Let me start with you, He Jing. People say this is the most extensive piece of legislation of its kind in the history of the People's Republic. It has a large book regulating the transactions between peoples. What does make the civil code different from any other codes?
Well, civil code is very important because it really deals with private parties' interest. You know, in China, we actually using the civil code to deal with a lot of civil issues and also commercial contractual issues. That's really relevant to all of us. You know, this is really a book. It has nearly like 100,000 words, like 1,200 articles. So it's very pervasive, covering lots of things that are relevant to all of us.
And Lawrence, of course, China has been seen the predecessor of the civil code, but will the enforcement of the new civil code make social life anything different? What will be the major changes?
Well, I think the old Chinese civil law was very much so focused on the protection of life, freedom from famine, for example, protection of adequate supply of food and material. But as society develops and our country develops, people are more concerned about protection of rights, right to privacy, right to dignity. And something very advanced in this civil code is the protection of personality rights. Now, so-called personality rights is very much so the protection of a person's effigy, a person's facial images. Now, that sort of thing is very advanced because we, for example, in Hong Kong, does not have a law that protects a person's facial image. So, for example, in a couple of years ago when I visited Beijing, there was a cartoon in Hong Kong depicting the presidents and in a funny way. So some Beijing official asked me, well, can you do something in Hong Kong? I said no, because there's no law that prohibits abusing or misusing someone's facial images in Hong Kong. So this is a very advanced law that is in China at the moment.
And George, I know that you've been studying China's civil code for some time. What is your reading?
I think from my perspective, the most interesting thing is the strengthening of what I call the personal rights. I know the usual translation is personality, but yeah, for example, the provision in the code for a cause of action regarding sexual harassment of another. Now, there has been some court recognition of that, and the Supreme People's Court listed it as a possible cause of action. But now, the fact that it's embedded in the fundamental law really reflects the. I think the increasing maturity of Chinese people's view of the idea of the equality of men and women and of personal dignity.
And of course, Einar, many people say that the Chinese has been value collective benefits. That's a collectivism society. Then it seems the enforcement of the civil code will stress more on personal rights and personality rights, as we just understand. Do you think this is a new development, Einar?
No, it's new in some ways because what it's done is it's codified everything, and by that it means that it's taken an overall approach. So most of these laws were in one form or another, or at least being considered, and at this point they put it all together, they harmonize them. So what it really means is this is a blueprint for what it means and what rights you have living in a socialist society. And I agree with my colleague, in the beginning it was all about property rights. Now it's about individual rights and what that means. And a very important part of that is your electronic rights. All right, what is it, can companies, internet companies, use your information, and under what circumstances, and what permissions do they have to do? So this is very forward thinking in the sense that it's thinking beyond the prosaic today and towards the digital economy.
Oh. But He-Jing, I know that this is probably new to many Chinese. Some of them, probably they don't even realize that they have the rights to protect their images, their digital footprints. How difficult will be the enforcement of those laws? Because it might be a new thing for courts as well.
Yes, actually the enforcement always comes two parts, right? The one part for the enforcement is by the government. So we have a very strong the cyber enforcement authority. But this law really gives the private party the rights to seek damage directly from the court. This really means that the parties can get the damages from the other side. In fact, what's really meaningful for this new law is it has this very fine distinction between privacy and also personality rights. This actually, the fine distinctions allows the private party to protect something that really essential to the dignity of a human being, but at the same time, when you distinguish the personal right, the personal information rights, it actually allows you to put that into transaction. So, at a certain extent, that one day the private party can benefit from their digital footprint. That's actually a very meaningful way to deal with that. So this law actually opens up lots of interesting opportunities. Actually, now it's the first time to recognize that the data may be protected as some sort of a property rights, but which is going to be left to the future legislations. And also virtual assets can be protected as well. So this is actually opened up lots of possibilities for the future.
But we have seen many practices of people's photos are being used and sometimes abused, especially on social media. People's digital information about their biological information have been used.
Absolutely, yeah.
Will that be protected, and how? Because it seems to be very rampant right now.
Yes, you got to rely on the lawsuit. Keep in mind, right? The law just become effective since January 1st. In fact, there are actually a handful of decisions just come out based on this new civil law. We have not seen any new decisions on the digital image side, but we have seen the cases related to the environmental protection. Actually, the very first time the punitive damages are now allowed for pollution cases. This is actually already coming from the civil law. I'm actually predicting that before long, then we're going to see a queue of cases where the private parties go after maybe the landlords, go after some property management companies for illegally handling the images. So I think that's going to come. This is really give the private parties the right to seek damages, monetary damages.
Lawrence, you're a law expert, and how do you foresee the enforcement of such a new civil code and its requirements on people's behaviors?
Well, I think there are many law enforcement agencies in the mainland China. But of course, there are new agencies that may have to establish or be established, new ones, to enforce the laws. For example, for effigies, for example, there is currently no authority that would be able to enforce that law. For example, there's also regulations towards human cloning. Now, as far as I'm aware, there has been no human cloning agencies so far in the mainland China that regulates or implements the law. So what is important is whether do we need a separate regulation that empowers or creates an enforcement agency for the purpose of regulating human cloning, for example.
And George, I want you to weigh in on this because obviously technology has expanded the frontiers of human activities. That also means legislators have a busy job and sometimes hard one to catch up with.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that the Supreme People's Court does a lot of work about to make effective these general principles. For example, using only Section 36 of the 2009 Tort Code, they developed a series of regulations and rules for trial courts for what I call network torts, so that misuse of your name, of your trade name, unfair competition was recognized as a cause of action, and back in 2014, and so the much of the what's embedded now in the fundamental law has been developing through the increasingly sophisticated guidance that the Supreme Court gives through things like Supreme People's Court gives through things like the guiding case system.
And George, of course, different countries have different legal frameworks. If you want to compare Chinese civil code with, for example, Americans and Europeans, what would you say?
Well, Yang Lixin says that the new code has tried to harmonize or drawn on both the continental tradition and the Anglo-American tradition, and I would say yes to that. But I think that the development of personal rights in the new code is really innovative, especially from what we call the continental or the code-based tradition. It has developed in many ways in the common law system, but I think it's an innovation in the code-based systems.
Yeah. NR, another aspect of law enforcement is that are citizens aware of the new civil code and how can they conform to the requirements? Do you think the Chinese have a special context in terms of recognizing the new civil code and what its role in society?
Yeah, I do, and it's actually, you're part of it. It's called the press. As soon as the cases are out there, I mean, there's an old saying in China, kill the chickens to scare the monkeys. And in this particular case, there will be some cases, there'll be landmark cases, people will pay attention to them and they'll start to understand. Because what we're talking about here is that we're all lawyers, so, you know, we talk in a lot of mumbo jumbo, but the fact is, what are my rights?
Ordinary people have to understand.
Well, yeah,
what is the impact?
The ordinary people have to understand what is their rights. I mean, what belongs to them versus what doesn't belong. And if somebody takes something from them, what can they do about it? And this will be done a lot through the press, through court cases. But it is, I agree with my colleagues, this is a training process. The judges themselves have to understand this. And I would hesitate to say that they want to have a huge flood of cases coming in. Judicial economy does not.
You expect a flood of cases?
No, I don't actually. I think what happens.
But should it be?
No, they shouldn't be, because what you really want is to prevent people from doing bad things, not have them go to court to enforce their rights. So what they're doing is to say, we're going to have a very tough administration, okay? And I don't see that as adding more bureaucracy. Where they see some sort of fundamental problem, they will go in and they will administer penalties on the civil basis. But if there is something that goes through the cracks, then individuals have that ability. This is a kind of a pressure relief valve. Individuals now have a cause of action to go after somebody who has violated their rights. And this is very important in a society that's evolving.
He Jing, do you foresee there will be a busy courthouses dealing with those new violations of civil codes?
I think probably going to remain steady, to be honest. Right now, the civil or the commercial cases takes up to like more than 80% of the entire course, the caseloads. Right now, actually, we probably do expect some kind of heroes, right, standing up to take advantage of those new rules. That's always a kind of thing that are going to change the law. In fact, that the Supreme Court just terminated around like 116 judicial interpretations. That's more like the rules, okay, like the de facto laws. So we expect that there will be quite a new open space for the courts to understand or interpret the new rules. So the lots of private parties will probably try, but our society is not that litigious. But I do expect some sort of increase, but not like a rapid growth of the cases.
Lawrence, what about the case in Hong Kong? Is it very popular for somebody to pursue lawsuits?
Well, just to pick up on the question that the other fellows have answered, if you compare the common law system with the civil law system is much simpler because everything is codified, it's written law, whereas in our system it's more complex because we have judicial decisions and they are really part of the law, and you got to read all these cases and precedents so as to understand how judges read a statute. So when you say, well, with people in China we having difficulties in understanding, I think it wouldn't be as difficult as it is in our common law system. Okay. So I wouldn't be worrying about people not be able to understand it. Yes.
Okay.
But coming back to the point about lawsuits in Hong Kong.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, there are, because people in Hong Kong do have lawsuits because rights are severely taken by, and people do engage people have trust in our Hong Kong legal system because we have an independent judiciary, and we have a lot of precedents from various common law jurisdictions to guide us on how a just and equitable outcome is to be reached.
Okay, let's talk about another very, should I say, eye-catching article that is on how couples can divorce. That's a hotly debated article, the cooling off period. It requires couples to basically seeking divorce and wait 30 days before finalizing the split, although this does not apply in cases involving domestic violence and abuse. So Einar, why divorcees have to wait 30 days to split? Well, what is the legislator's intent?
Well, quite frankly, it's a very short time. If you go to the United States, they have a cooling off period.
It depends how suffering you are in the marriage.
Let's just take COVID-19. After the quarantine was lifted throughout China, there was a stampede to the divorce courts. People just got sick and tired of each other. People under 30 in China, if they get married under 30, 50% are resulting in divorce. And it's not in...
That's a very high percentage.
It's a very high percentage. You see it in other places in the world, but the issue is that people have to think a little bit more carefully, getting involved in marriage.
So you're presuming they have not thought carefully if they go to the divorce court?
Look, if you were locked up with somebody for 6 weeks or 3 months, and all of a sudden all you can think of is I need to get a divorce, actually you should take a period of time. This was an extraordinary event to be locked up with somebody like that. And barring domestic violence, there should be some attempt to save the marriage. Otherwise, people will change marriages, left their jobs.
But He Jing, the civil code, when it was adopted, they didn't, I think, consider the factor of COVID, did they?
Yeah, I don't think so. This actually civil code is very interesting. It's both very forward-looking and also has a lot of value-based consideration. This is the cooling off period is one of them. The legislators certainly want the couples to be careful about their marriage. And another example I can give to you about this value-based consideration is like the residential rights for the property. That's apparently designed for taking care of elderly people, taking care of the aging society. This means that the older people may be able to save the right to live in the same property, even though the property is being sold. So this is really value-based consideration. This is very thoughtful consideration by the legislators. Though you can see they deal with both those electronic images, right, the deep fakes, the technology stuff, and also this the family, the consideration.
We have Professor Li Jingzhao joining us on the line. You are the only female guest today. So what is your thoughts on cooling off period of 30 days before divorce?
Thank you for having me on this topic. Well, I think my first reaction is similar to most people, which is absurd. Actually, according to online survey, according to online survey, 95% responses were, well, we should have cooling off for marriage instead of for divorce. But after I did research, I'm kind
that
of
will be very
convinced
unpopular, Professor Li.
I'm convinced because actually the government has conducted trials of cooling off period counseling in 6 different provinces, including Sichuan, Shandong, Guangdong, and several other provinces. And it showed that through this cooling off period, at that time, the trial lasted either for 1 month or 3 months. They could reduce the divorce rate by 40%. I was really shocked when I read those experiments, those results. So when they added that into the civil code, they made it only 1 month, the cooling off period for 1 month. Well, it does make filing for divorce difficult because in the past you only had to make 1 trip to get the divorce done. But now you have to make 2
Let's come
trips.
back to He Jing. So is it the intent of the legislators to make divorce difficult? And is it really legitimate to make it more difficult?
I think intention to have people to be more cautious, okay? And well, it's a choice
What
of
about they don't
legislators.
like caution?
Well, that's the choice of the legislators, right? This is the job of legislators. They have their value call. They think that's that they have a certain way to looking at how the family, how the marriage should be handled. So legislator make that call.
Lawrence, your take?
Yes. Yes, now you got to compare with other countries. Like in Australia, there's a statutory mandatory period of separation of 1 year before you can even apply for divorce. In Hong Kong, there's a
that's more
mandatory
difficult.
requirement of 2 years separations. Yes, it's more difficult for
Yeah.
people to divorce. It's not a cooling down period. It's actually a mandatory period that you cannot apply to court for divorce within that period.
Right.
So China actually
Yeah.
has one of the a very minimal cooling off period. In the United States, it's the same.
Right.
It goes from 6 months. Generally, there's a counseling that goes in
But
there.
before this cooling off statute came into place, people still got divorced. Why we have to change it with a
Well,
30-day cooling off?
You just heard the statistics.
What is wrong with divorce?
Well, what is wrong with the divorce is that look how much money is put into the marriage itself, the actual wedding ceremony. Then you get the disruption. You have 2 people now who are divorced. It's much harder for them to get remarried. It is disruptive to society. There's all sorts of reasons why you don't want people treating marriage like it's buying a car. It's not what it is. So with 1 month, if they can save 40% of those marriages, there's also judicial economy. You don't want everyone filing for divorce and then getting remarried and then divorced. It should not be something that is taken lightly. The state has an interest in marriage because it protects the children, it protects the parents, the grandparents. And so, yes, this is a societal value.
And Professor Li, of course, the divorce rate in China has been rising since the turn of the century. It has been increasing about 0.2 divorces per 1,000 every year. So the context is that people are more easy to go to divorce when their marriage is a problem.
We do see the rise of what we call the impulsive divorce, which is mostly caused by impulsive marriage. But in general, the divorce rate in China is still very low as compared to many other countries. So I think the media has really amplified the crisis of marriage in China. Actually, sociological studies have shown that the family marriage, the family value, and the child-centered family are still very dominant and prevalent in China. And the divorce rate in China is still way within the reasonable range. So it's not really a crisis.
And do you
But,
believe the new
I
law
agree
will
with other
further
guests
narrow
that-
the range? Do you think it will save many marriages, as you've been studying sociology?
I personally, I think, like, first of all, 1 month would not be enough for a family that files for divorce if they have an underage child, because the child needs a long time to readjust. And also, if you only have cooling off period and you do not have supporting counseling service for counseling engagement with the divorcing couple, they are not really maturing, or they're not really improving much in handling intimate relationship. So counseling is really, really important.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to emphasize. Without counseling service, this 1 month or this 30-day cooling off period will not be as effective as desired. The estimation is there should be 30% reduction of divorce, but I don't think without counseling, this 30-day will help much.
Lawrence, you earlier mentioned Australia, and there's also very strict requirement on divorce. How's that law worked to prevent impulsive divorce?
Well, as in many common law countries, there is a statutory minimum period you got to observe. It is count from the day of separation. You got to be separated from the other party, from your husband or wife, for 1 year. So that what it means by separation
So
is,
1
for
month
example, you don't
would
live
not
under
be
one
enough to
roof.
make that arrangement.
No, you got to be separated for 1 year. And in Hong Kong, it's 2 years. So you could, for example, you got to live separately for 2 years. You cannot have sexual relationships, for example. You do not share your finances together, for example. So these are all factors that counts towards whether you've actually separated from the other from the other side. And if you have, then you are counted 2 year period or 1 year period is counted as full separation. Then you can apply.
But He Jing, there's some special context here in China. For example, a couple probably cannot afford to live separately. They share the house. And also, probably we don't have very mature marriage counselors in this country. They don't have anywhere to go.
Well, I think that really indeed a different context. Like I said before, before this law was passed, there was no such a requirements, right, for the couple to get divorced. This is the adding of this cooling period is an effort, I think, for the legislator to choose to handle whatever the crisis or problems our Chinese society may be having with marriage. Of course, that's in the eyes of a legislator. This is an attempt to make some sort of a difference. Again, this is very cultural.
All right, we're running out of time. Thank you very much, He Jing. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Professor Li. And thank you, NR. I hope marriage as a happy institution can be workable. Thank you very much for watching this edition of Dialogue. I'm Zhu in Beijing. Goodbye.